Hello, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, why is Europe so fixated on Muslim women who wear the headscarf? We'll look at the brutal attack that's once again put the spotlight on the hijab. Our digital producer Malika Bilal is here looking out for your live feedback, looking as amazing as always.
Thank you, Femi.
We're talking about the hijab. People are going to be watching this going, what does Malika think about the hijab? She wears one every day. So how do you navigate a conversation like this where you obviously have a take?
Right. Well, I think it definitely all comes down to personal choice and freedom of choice. Now, I'm fortunate to live in a country where I can pretty much wear whatever I want without many repercussions. But I've lived in and visited places where hijab or the headscarf is the norm. And it's in those places that, unusually enough, I wasn't allowed to visit some establishments and do certain activities because I wore the scarf. So it's a complicated issue. But of course, that's my story. We want to hear your story. So join the conversation. Just make sure you use the hashtag AJStream.
So there's so much to discuss in today's show, and our community is going to be leading the way as always. But here are some of the other hashtags that they're following. Women, children and even men across Sweden are wearing headscarves to protest recent violence against a pregnant Muslim woman in Stockholm. The woman's headscarf was apparently torn off and her head slammed against a car. The stream covered this story after we heard about the online Swedish protests in support of the victim. Using the hashtag hijab or hijab outcry, people began posting pictures of themselves wearing the traditional Muslim headscarf. So there are now reports that the same pregnant woman has been assaulted a second time. And these attacks have once again focused attention on the hot button issue of the hijab in Europe. Many Muslims feel they're being specifically targeted for their beliefs, especially after some countries began banning the headscarf in public spaces and schools. So, is this a clash of cultures, or do Europeans have a right to protect the ideals of secularism? To help us discuss this, joining us on Skype from Stockholm, we have Gina Delari. She is a TV radio host and comedian. And she's she's the very first female Muslim TV host in the country and took part in the hijab outcry campaign. In our Google Plus Hangout, we have Bob Churchill, who joins us from London. He works with the Secular Europe campaign. In Berlin, lawyer and activist Serena Tesh. She believes in some cases that the hijab is used as a political symbol rather than a spiritual one. And in Paris is Sayeeda Unusi. She is a member of the Forum of European Muslim Youth and Student Organizations, and Sayeeda believes that Islamophobia is responsible for the recent attacks on hijabis. It's great to have all of you in the stream. I am going to start though with Malika and Femi's Guide to the Muslim Veil.
I like that.
It's an exclusive to this program. On my laptop, I've got a couple of different styles. Can you talk us through the first one, Malika?
Well, it's a slight exaggeration, but I think there's just as many styles as there are Muslim women in the world. So you have the khimar and the shador. Shador is something you see typically in Iran. It's a bit encompassing. The Al-Amira is actually just, that's a brand of style. It's a two-piece and a shayla seen in the Gulf. Down below you see the niqab and the burqa. One covers the face, while the burqa has a mesh covering over the eyes. And the hijab, like the one I like to think I'm wearing, covers the neck and the hair.
And you've got a rather flamboyant little tail to yours. What's going on there?
And seafoam green.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so now you know some of the various different styles, because if they pop up in our conversation, you know exactly what we're talking about. But let's get back to the news peg that started us off on this edition of the stream, and that's about the attack on the hijabi, the pregnant hijabi in Sweden. Let me bring in Gina here. What is the atmosphere like for Muslim women who decide to wear scarves in Sweden? Gina, can you give us a sense of what women are dealing with in Sweden?
I think that I can't talk about all women and how they feel, but my mother wears a hijab and she just put it on 3 years ago, I think, and it was late at night and she came down and she had the hijab on and I was like, what is that? Are you wearing the hijab? And then she was like, I don't know. And I asked her, are you scared? And she said, yeah, I'm scared what people will think about me and what they will say. And I just told her, like, do your thing. If you want to wear a hijab, just go out and do it. And she did it, but people, like she told me, people, they treat her in a different way. They ask her stuff, and sometimes they think she don't know Swedish, and I think it's very hard for a lot of people, and many women, they feel like they just have to accept it. I asked my mom and I say to her, why don't you say anything? And she's like, but it's the way it is. And we just have to accept these things, that it is like that. And I think it's very sad.
What's to be scared of? When you asked your mum, are you scared? Did you think she might be physically attacked or abused in a way?
No, I think that she was really scared because I saw her. I saw it in her face that she's afraid what people will think about her. Because, I mean, I'm born in Sweden and we grew up in a very little town up in the north, and there's not a lot of Muslims over there. So my whole life I had people coming to me and say, and I don't even wear the hijab, and people are coming to me and saying, is your dad gonna make you marry your cousin, or does he hit you? And, you know, people in school and teachers even went up to me and asked me stuff like that. So some people, not all Swedes of course, but some people have a really like narrow picture of what a Muslim woman is. And when they see that you're wearing a hijab also, they think that she's being forced. And my dad, he didn't even want my mom to wear the hijab because he knew that he would get the blame for it. So it's really like, sometimes even in Muslim communities, some people say don't wear the hijab because you always it's hard to get a job. My best friend had it and she took it off then because she felt like people are seeing her in a different way.
And we're going to talk about how people are seen a little bit later in the show, but our community's tweeting in about the campaign in Sweden. Hinmäki says, the campaign was an excellent show of solidarity, not cult appropriation, with a visually Muslim woman who was attacked. Now, Saida, we also have a tweet here from Sarah Yassin who says, the campaign was great because it was about solidarity rather than saving. It was only the slim silver lining to that horrific story. And now when she mentions it was about solidarity rather than saving, she references tweets like this from Queen Kalia, who says, this picture comes to mind when I read about liberal hypocrisy regarding attitudes to hijab. And now I know you can't see it, Saida, but for our viewers at home that can, it's a picture of a woman without her head covered, pulling the scarf off of a Muslim woman saying, hang in there, we will free you. So take us through that mindset of the attempt to free Muslim women from the shackles of hijab.
Yeah, that is so typical, I think, in Western society, just to tell people that this makes you oppressed and this is not good for you. I had a lot of people coming to me and saying that you shouldn't be living the way you're living, and they think that, you know, they're gonna free the oppressed little Muslim girl so she can be free and live her life. But it isn't really like that, because for me, like in some countries, we have countries where men make their women put on clothes, and we have some countries where men make their women take off their clothes. And I work in the TV industry, and every day I have people telling me like, just you know, wear a tank top or wear something just to make me, you know, look sexy or sexualize myself in some way. So it's like, it's oppression over here also, but people don't see it in that way because what they're used to, that's the way of living. And it's not always, it's gotten better, you know, people are starting to realize that you can live in a different way and it's your own choice, but there's still that mentality of saving the poor Muslim woman. And I think it's very disturbing.
Saida.
Yeah, I think that you raised a very interesting question, which is the actually relationship of feminism to hijab. And the interesting matter is that we rarely give the voice to hijabi women to speak about themselves, to explain why they are wearing a hijab, and to speak, you know, for themselves. So I think this is actually the actual case that we are facing at the moment, which is that you have Muslim women wearing hijab who are speaking out, who are talking for themselves, and that's unique. I think it's something very good that has to be welcomed very positively from feminist movements, all sorts of feminist movements. And I mean, we are also saying in the same time that there is the development of an Islamic feminism, and that there is Muslim women who are taking the responsibility to speak for themselves, to stand up for their rights, and to not let everyone else talking for themselves. So I think that all this is actually very positive movements that we are seeing at the moment. And regarding the pregnant woman that has been attacked in Sweden, I would like to remind that in France, this happened actually twice the last weeks. And there is also a woman who actually lost her baby. She was pregnant and she lost her baby. There is few girls who have been attacked, even a minor, like a quite young girl. So, like all these attacks on Muslim women in France is quite the actuality, to say it all. And it is, I think, from my perspective, I think it's a direct consequence on the very hard and violent political discourse on hijab, and the fact that the political class will, since 2004, since the hijab ban law, which has been enforced in France, that we have a very violent narrative about Muslim women in general, and specifically against women wearing hijab, and we are seeing the direct consequences of it now.
All right, so Yida, I want to bring in Bob. Bob, I'm just going to read you something from the Huffington Post France, which was a 16-year-old girl. She blogged about an experience when she was attacked a couple of weeks ago. This is what she says. She says, "Suddenly, two guys got out of the car and tore off my veil while insulting me. 'You dirty Muslim, go back to your country, take this off.'" This is a heart-wrenching tale. But it's a teen girl who just happened to be wearing a scarf. What is going on right now in Europe regarding women who decide to wear the hijab and the attacks, some of them institutionalized, some of them not? How would you explain what's going on?
Was that a question to me, sorry?
It was, Bob, yes. Give us a secular view on this from your perspective.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that obviously any attack of this kind is horrific, and that no one in this sort of secularist community that I work with thinks any violent attack like that is a good idea. I think that we need to really draw apart the three sort of distinct issues here. One is a sort of violent response against Muslims linked to nationalism and anti-immigration. One is legal prohibition and bans, which are not the same thing, and they may share some common basis in aspects of it, but not the whole thing. And one is this another ground where there may be legitimate criticisms against the culture of certainly of say niqab and burqa wearing, if not hijab, where there does seem to be a sort of a valid and legitimate line of argument from the ex-Muslim community that I know in the UK, for example, where there is a valid criticism to be made about the kind of culture that represents. As Malika mentioned at the beginning, we have many more countries in the world that socially or legally coerce people to wear certain types of clothes. And in Europe, actually, there's only 3 countries with sort of generic bans on face coverings. They only cover face coverings, and they don't cover hijab. So I think we need to sort of pull apart the differences there. Violent attacks on people wearing hijab are obviously wrong. There are legitimate concerns about when people are being coerced to wear face coverings. And
Bob,
those should be considered separately, I think.
Bob, how do you even understand whether a woman has been coerced to wear a hijab or not? How does the state make that decision? That's a tough one.
I don't defend state coming in that. I think there's something remarkably creepy about the idea that the state should come in and tell someone you shouldn't wear this thing on the off chance that you're not wearing it of your own volition, when of course you may well be. I also think there's something remarkably creepy about telling someone you have to wear this. If you don't wear this, then you're obviously an unholy person, or you're putting yourself about, or all these sort of lines of argument that we hear that are about the sort of social coercement to wear.
Right.
Yeah, but isn't that like two different things, though? I mean,
exactly, very different things.
Yeah,
yes.
Because the whole subject here in Sweden, I feel like it's gotten the wrong turn, because a woman gets her head beaten in a car and people are discussing whether the hijab is right or wrong, and they're not discussing the predator or why he hit her. And I think that's the issue, that we don't have to agree, you don't have to like the hijab, you don't even have to like Muslims or believe in the same thing, but we have to separate the two. Like, just everyone having equal rights, and a woman can go around and wear her cross or her hijab or wear a short skirt.
It was the introduction to the program that drew those two things together and mentioned both this attack and prohibitive laws, and some made allusion to some wider sort of sense of Islamophobia.
These two sides of the debate are actually, though, being seen online. And I want to bring Seyran in with this tweet from Faraz, who says, even if the majority of people support the ban, and probably do, it holds no ground for a democratic government to prohibit any kind of clothing. But on the back of that, we have a Facebook comment from Rationalist Central, who says, when religion denies a young person the right to choose freely, that's a violation of their human right to think and decide for themselves. So when parents fail, society, i.e. government, should step in. Is this just an instance of society, government stepping in to do what
but how do you know
person says the parent should have done?
Yeah, but do you have, like, what are they gonna do? They're gonna have like a form that they say, oh, and if you have everything right on the form, you're forced to wear the hijab, and if you don't, like, it's not possible for a government to say that. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to, as I said, again, separate the two. There's something, like, it's always wrong that people are getting beaten up in the streets for wearing something religious, and that's for all religions.
Okay, Gina, we have your take. I really want to bring Seyran in. Seyran, go ahead, jump in.
Okay, absolutely. You are absolutely right. To beaten somebody because he's wearing something what you don't like is no way. It's no question. I think we are absolutely agreed to each other that we are not accepting any violence. That's the point. So we don't have to discuss if it's okay to beat somebody or not to beat somebody. But we have to discuss this issue very honestly and ask us and ask the other person why they are wearing the headscarf. When we now discussing about violence against religious groups, that it's another point, okay? But now we are sitting here together.
It's deeply linked.
But it's really not. But it's real. That's the issue. That
let me just point out, when we talk about women and women's movement, and we talk about the situation of the women in society, so we have to point out and bring the big story about women's movement. Women fight for, don't forget that, they always fight for more freedom in society. And it's for us as women, not long time ago, that we were not allowed to go to war, to get education, whatever, you know, and we always also fight against women when women fight for more freedom.
And this is exactly what hijabi women are asking for. For example, if you take,
excuse me,
the example
I have the chance.
Seyran, let me just bring
one difference more. If you talk about
Sayeeda, hold on one moment. We'll come back to you.
Okay. Just 1 second. Only one sentence about sexism, also in all over the world. You know, for me, it makes no difference if a woman has to be naked on a car for advertising a car. I'm also fighting against that. It's sexualizing and it's sexism against women.
Okay, so let me bring Sayeeda into this conversation, because we will have to share it amongst all of us. So Sayeeda, what did you want to say?
What Seyran was saying is so interesting, because actually
Oh, sorry, I don't hear you.
Yes, so we've just lost the audio on that. We're going to get Saida to jump on the phone so that we can continue to hear her conversation. But while we do that, and while we wait for that, I want to play you a little comment that was made by Manuel Valls. He's the French Interior Minister. He made this specific comment at the opening of the Grand Mosque in Strasbourg, France, last September. It gives you a sense of where the French administration are coming from in the way that they look at Islam and Muslims in France. Have a listen to this.
I will not hesitate to expel those who claim they are acting in the name of Islam and pose a serious threat to public order and foreigners in our countries who do not meet our laws and our values. I will not accept the behavior of Salafists and other groups that defy the Republic. That is not the Islam of France.
So we're talking here about the Islam of France, and we posed the question at the beginning of the program as well, is if governments in Europe want to protect secularism, is this the way to go? Saida, what's your take on this?
My opinion on that is that the French government, in a certain way, has a wrong comprehension of what is secularism. If you look at history, secularism is the separation between the state and the political and the church. So the political power from the religious power. And when we are talking about secularism, when we also talk about the neutrality, the religious neutrality of the state, we are not talking about the citizens. We are talking about those who actually have the power. And it's very important that we do a difference because this is about the definitions. This is about the core values of France. And this is also about religious liberty and freedom, which is in all international law texts. And the actual French narrative is actually very political because you know that we have all over Europe the rise of far-right parties and groups. And it's also, a good and a very simple manner to get elected.
Right.
Because we are living in a very troubled moment with all this economic crisis. So we need scapegoats, and the actual scapegoats are Muslims.
All right, Saida, I'm going to ask you to take a breath there because I'm just going to squeeze the community in before we hit the end of the main show, and then we head into the post-show. Malika.
Well, thanks, Femi. Well, you played that video comment from France. Amoun on Twitter says, I wish the French reacted all times a hijabi got attacked. We would feel that there'd be more consideration, and she's referencing what happened in Sweden. But Bob, I want to bring you in here with this last video comment. Have a listen to this.
France tried to forbid headscarves supposedly to protect women. When this didn't work, it forbade ostentatious religious displays in the name of secularism. This in a country where many public spaces are named after saints and Catholic holidays are national holidays, where kosher food is readily available but halal food creates fear. In Switzerland, minarets have been forbidden but not church steeples, and in Cologne or Granada, permission to build a mosque took literally decades. Is it secularism or fear of Islam?
So, Bob, he asked the question, is it secularism that Europe is afraid of, or is it Islamophobia?
Is it secularism that Europe is what?
Afraid of, or is it Islam?
It's certainly sometimes afraid of secularism. We've had debate here in the UK where people have attacked secularism and as the principle of church-state separation. So sometimes they're afraid of that. I think that when you take comments like Emmanuel Valls there, and he in that same speech where he was opening a mosque, let's not forget, he also, that speech begins with him praising the Muslim community in France. So to sort of take one portion of it where he says we don't want extremism, which, well, no country wants extremism, could be slightly misrepresentative. I don't know much about Emmanuel Valls' politics overall. I'm not saying he's right about everything. I'm just saying that on that particular point, he wasn't hounded out of that mosque for saying something
so
terrible.
Bob, I'm going to ask you to do something really mean, which is just give us a closing sentence, because I'm literally out of time here. What's the last sentence you want to leave us with before we head to the post show?
We must condemn violence against Muslims where it occurs. We must also recognise that it's not the same thing as laws prohibiting and against legitimate criticism of genuine oppression where it occurs.
Wow, he's good. He did that in 10 seconds and less. You'll be hearing more from Bob and all of our guests in the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. Just time to tell you about Tuesday though. Is New Zealand turning it into a surveillance state? Yes. I did say New Zealand. That's what some people are calling the country after new law just legalised domestic spying. More on that tomorrow, but right now we'll be talking about the hijab in Europe and potentially Islamophobia at stream.aljazeera.com. We'll see you online. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Stream's online post show. We're continuing our discussion on Europe's fixation with the headscarf or hijab after a brutal attack which left a pregnant Muslim woman in hospital. Still with us we have Gina Durari, she's the first ever Muslim Swedish TV host, Bob Churchill with the Secular Europe campaign, Seyran Atesh is a lawyer and activist in Berlin, and Sayeeda Unusi is member of the Forum of European Muslim Youth and Student Organisations. In the 10 seconds I have between the main show and the post show, I said, hey Malika, what else does the community want to talk about? Where are they taking us?
Assimilation. there's
okay.
a few good tweets on that. Now, many Muslim women say that they wear hijab to embrace their faith and identity, but some claim that it excludes them from assimilating. So we have a tweet from Qasim Rashid who says those are nonsense claims. He says, my wife has 2 masters. She's a mom, a professional, and wears a hijab. Are educated professional moms out of style? And another person, Hamida, asks, assimilation would be difficult if one feels hostility coming from the community. So Seyran, I want to direct that one to you. How do you assimilate into a culture that's hostile to you?
Well, actually, like assimilation is a debate that we Muslims, French Muslims, we consider as a dated debate. It's from another century, basically. So since then, we have also this concept of integration, but now we are not, bothering ourselves anymore with that. We are just respecting the law. Our French have been raised and born, for most of us in France, are having a French culture. We went to public French schools. We are talking French. We actually feeling Europeans, sometimes more Europeans than anything else. So we actually think that we don't have anything to prove anymore, and that it's all about to see how we can be a pre-value to this country, and not to see if we are fitting or not in a certain model. So this is actually most of the state of mind young Muslims here in France are in, and actually even at the European level, because in my work I'm meeting a lot of young Europeans coming from many countries who are facing different problems, like for example the Nordic countries, for example the Muslim community in Norway, the Muslim community in Italy, and when you feel like you did the impossible to prove that you deserve it, that you deserve your place within the society, and that you are following, what people are expecting from you, then you just do your best, and that's it.
Okay.
So we are not talking about assimilation anymore.
So Malika, it's interesting. We've got a Sayeeda and a Seyran, and sometimes the Sayeeda gets in there before the Seyran. Seyran, we wanted to ask you that same question about assimilation. What's your take on how do you do that?
Assimilation?
Yes.
I mean, assimilation in Germany. So, I'm myself, I'm not assimilated. I have a transcultural identity. So I ask many people coming from Turkey, so why they are so much more identify themselves only with the Turkish culture or with their religion, and are not settled down here in Europe. They are not feeling European because of the fear of assimilation. Assimilation is a part of integration, but I would never accept assimilation absolutely in a culture, because my dad, he's a Kurdish man, and he was assimilated in Turkey. So I'm absolutely against assimilation in the way that you have to leave your first culture or one of your culture. So what does it mean for me as a Turk coming from Turkey and living in Germany? It means I am German and Turkish, and everybody has to accept that. And I'm a Muslim woman living in Germany, so I'm a part of Germany, and nobody has the right to assimilate us in a way that we have to be clear Germans, or what they call that, you know. We are not only Germans, we have many identities. So, and when it comes to the religion, so I asked myself, and everybody's talking about this issue, why religion has to be so important in our daily life everywhere. I believe in God, honestly, believe me, and I'm never fighting against my religion, against Islam. I'm just asking why we are not allowed to live religion temporarily, like in our time. And ask the women, all the women, so we have two very nice women here, we can discuss together, and I like to know since when women in Germany, also in Europe, start wearing headscarf, and why they start veiling themselves. My mom, she came to Germany.
Seyran, I'm going to let you ask that question because we don't have a lot of time. So you've asked that question, let's have that conversation. So let me ask Saida. So Seyran wanted to know why do you wear a headscarf?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually. You know, what Seyran said about what was the situation back in the days and now is that now you have actually, young women who are empowered, who went to schools, who are learning about their religion, who have no difficulties in identifying themselves with their religion, and they don't see any contradiction between the fact to be a practicing Muslim and in the same time to be a citizen, to be a European citizen. So I'm wearing a headscarf for the same reason people, will wear, for example, a kippah, or will go to the church, or will wear a cross. So that's all about spirituality, that's about your beliefs, that's about your religion. And that's true that there is a whole difference between the state of practicing Muslim women back in the days and now. And, you just have to point out the fact that they have a better education, that they went to universities. So actually they can make their own choices.
Okay.
Like wearing hijab, for example.
All right, that's a good point to leave a pause, because ladies and Bob, I also want to get the community in as well into the conversation. Malika.
Well, in answer to Seyran's question, we have a tweet from Soraya who says, sigh. Sad, much attention around hijab. Human nature is to focus on the exterior, but there's so much more to Muslim women than what they wear or what they don't wear. But Bob, I want to end the tweets with this from Nasreen, who says, if European countries pride themselves on freedom of choice, it must extend to choices that challenge the status quo. What are your thoughts?
What do I make of that? I think I've been fairly clear that, as far as I'm concerned, the position of secularism should be for that freedom. It shouldn't be looking to ban things, even if it has criticisms against them. So, for example, we've heard a couple of times one of the earlier things from the community referred to the ban in Europe. And I'm not really sure what that refers to. Europe hasn't banned the hijab, certainly. It hasn't banned the burqa or niqab. Certain countries have made certain bans. 3 countries that I know of have put certain public bans on full face coverings. But we're not talking about a widespread sort of European legislation against Muslim dress. In fact, any time that local rulings against face coverings have been brought to the European Court of Human Rights under the European Convention, they've been thrown out. So at the European level, when freedom of religion or belief mechanisms come into play, they tend to work in favour of freedom. And I think someone was referring earlier to people having choice, and I think that by and large, not all the time, because there are certain laws in certain countries, but by and large in Europe there is choice that certainly there is not in Iran or Saudi Arabia, for example. And I think that if we're concerned about women being forced to wear certain things, then there's far more meat in a conversation about what can only be described as sort of sexual apartheid in Saudi Arabia than there is in Europe at the moment.
Gina,
the thing is all.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to ask you to jump in with that thought, and I'm going to ask you for a closing thought about the hijab outcry campaign, because I know you took part in that. But just very briefly, I know you wanted to respond to Bob.
I think that in everything new in life, people are like the way we are, we want to understand it. And if we don't understand it, it turns very scary. But I don't think it's the responsibility of a person to have to explain themselves every time she asks, why are you wearing the hijab and why this and why that? I don't think that it's my responsibility to explain why I don't wear it, and I don't think it's my mom's responsibility to explain to anyone why she wears it. I think that we all should be striving for everyone's freedom of choice and everyone's right to put something on. It's the same thing like, you know, when people are saying, why do rappers wear different clothes and why do rockers
so
wear
Gina, see, I have a pushback for that, because a rapper wearing bling is not the same as your mother wearing hijab. But I'm not going to debate with you because we don't have time for that debate. What we do have time for is for me to ask you just very briefly about hijab outcry. What does that tell us about Swedish society?
It tells us that we still have a lot of problems in the society, but we also have a lot of people wanting to work towards a solution, wanting to show that this is wrong. We have a lot of Swedish women and men that are supportive, that are for striving for a better community, and we still have a lot of like issues even in work and even in media. We don't have a lot of Muslim people or someone with a headscarf on.
Right.
We're still not there, but we're striving towards it. And I think this is hijab uppropet with Nabil and Fujan did a great job just like putting it on the map and making people talk about it, because people are afraid to talk about it because it's such an infected thing to talk about.
I'm glad that we weren't afraid to talk about it today on the stream. So Gina, Saida, Seyran and Bob Churchill, thank you very much for being part of this discussion. We thought we were talking about the hijab, but we're talking about so much more, right, Malika?
It's a very deep conversation. We've already gotten more than 1,000 comments on our post to this, and I expect it'll go up after this.
Wow. Thank you, everybody, for being part of our conversation online, offline, and watching on TV. So, what will we do next on the stream? Well, on Tuesday, is New Zealand turning into a surveillance state? Yes, I did say New Zealand. That's what some people are calling the country after a new law just legalised domestic spying. More on that tomorrow. But in the meantime, you know where the stream will always be online at stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching.